Hello, welcome to our Remote Education and Employment Ability Symposium. I'm Michael Papp, with the Rehab Engineering and Assistive Technology program at the Alabama Department of Rehabilitation Services. Our goal is to bring together assistive technology and accessibility professionals to discuss how people with disabilities can have access to the same information, engage in the same interactions, and access the same programs and services with equivalent ease as their peers without disabilities within the COVID-19 environment. When all this started back in March, we struggled to figure out how to continue providing the best services that we could. Staff in our program were able to reach out to other professionals who've been providing remote services to help get us started. We will be talking about some of the things that we have learned and refined over the past 3 months. Also participating today are staff from E.H. Gentry, part of the Alabama Institute for Deaf and Blind. They will be discussing how they're currently providing remote assistive technology services. We'll also have one of our staff engineers talking about how to set up a good home school or home work environment and issues surrounding that. We'll end the symposium with a panel of individuals who will discuss some of the unique challenges faced by people with disabilities in the COVID-19 environment. Since this is a symposium, we'll be limiting 10 to 15 minutes per topic to allow for discussion after each presentation. I've been providing rehab engineering services for over 20 years now, and not much has changed in the way that we provide evaluations, training, or support. I think we have a real big opportunity now to refine our service delivery model, to think about why we do what we do, to reevaluate our core purpose, and to find new ways to meet the needs of consumers as quickly and completely as we can. I think we're currently in a defining moment in the provision of assistive technology services. So I think it's very important to ask ourselves, what is possible now that people become more comfortable with remote assistive technology and remote technologies? I think it's a big question, and it's something that we need to think about. We're in a position to leverage technology to provide faster evaluations. We can also provide more frequent trainings when trainers don't have to spend an hour or two traveling out to see people. We can also provide short, more frequent training and support sessions that are impractical with long distance travel. There are still many services that can only be provided with direct consumer contact, but I think we can make better use of staff time if we can find ways to provide many services remotely. I hope this symposium will help everyone start thinking about and discussing new ways to provide assistive technology and accommodation services. And with that, let's get started. So to kick off today's discussions, let's go over what all we are going to talk about. Switch and share this. So the topics that we're going to go over today, we're going to start off with myself and our assistive technology specialist, Tabitha, in the Huntsville area, talking about how we are performing remote evaluations and assessments at ADRS within the Rehab Engineering program. Following that, Doug Nixon, Joel Stevens, Carrie Dean, and Glenn Tommy will be discussing how the assistive technology staff at E.H. Gentry are providing remote services. Then Ashley McElroy, who's our engineer located in the Birmingham area, will be discussing some research that she has done and information that she's put together on setting up a home work and learning environment. And then at the very end, we will have a panel of people talking about how the COVID-19 epidemic affects people with different types of disabilities. So to start off with, let me talk about the best practices and the resources that we've put together for the Rehab Engineering and Assistive Technology program. I do want to take the time to give special thanks to a few people, starting with Amanda Reinsfelder at Walter Reed Medical Center. She has been doing remote assistive technology assessments for, well, since last fall, and was very generous in sharing with me everything that she's learned and some of the resources and documents that they've come up with as to best practices. And we really would not have gotten as far as we did, as quickly as we did, without her input. I'd also like to thank Jane Belize Vincent at University of Michigan for taking the time to talk with me about support for students. Kim Lilly in Tennessee with their technology program provided me a lot of input of how they're working with the different community based assessment services. And of course, Raj Pagadala at Georgia VR, he has been sharing everything that's come across his desk concerning remote assessment, as I've been sending him stuff as well. So I really do want to give a shout out and thank them for the input that they have provided to me. So just to give you a little background, the current restrictions that our staff are operating with, currently all staff within one of our buildings or facilities must wear face coverings in all public areas. Consumers who arrive at one of our offices without a mask will be provided with one. We are under travel restrictions where services should be provided remotely unless all other avenues have been exhausted. Consumers who need direct contact services are supposed to answer a 4-question survey, and that's at least within our vocational rehab program. And it's questions such as, have you or anyone in your household been diagnosed with COVID-19? Have you recently been tested? Have you traveled out of the country? That kind of stuff. Contact with consumers is supposed to be kept to 6 feet or more, so we should not actually have direct contact with them. If close contact's required, staff members are required to wear a mask and gloves and then use hand sanitizer before and after contact with those consumers. So the types of services that we're providing remotely include both evaluations and training and support. Our evaluation process has changed a little bit from what it was pre-COVID-19, but we do start with a phone interview, find out what the needs of the individual are. At that point, if it's appropriate, we'll schedule a Zoom meeting with that person, and we are using the HIPAA compliant version of Zoom, and hopefully that person has access to what they need to be able to be involved with the Zoom meeting. And then we'll perform a site visit if necessary. And there are certain types of evaluations where a site visit is just necessary. If we're doing a ramp evaluation, I've done a couple of those since mid-March. Of course, equipment delivery needs to be done on site, and so there's some things that do require that. The other thing that we're doing a lot of is technical training and support, and I know Tabitha's up in Huntsville has been doing a lot of that. And again, we're using the HIPAA compliant version of Zoom. It does allow desktop sharing back and forth between both people, so it's pretty convenient for us to be able to log on, and we can do some screen sharing. We can either talk a consumer through what they need to be able to do, like what they need to click on or what settings they need to have. They also have the option of being able to give us control over their computer if we have to go into the control panel and find a microphone setting or something and change. Zoom does give us the capacity to do that remotely, so it's pretty handy. So there, of course, are some benefits and limitations to doing remote assessments. One of the benefits is that it does allow us to determine if an on-site evaluation is needed. So if we can see the site ahead of time and see how complex things are, it does help us make a determination if we need to go out to see something. It does reduce the amount of time that's on-site. So if we were doing, say, a home modification assessment, and we had an idea of where we're looking at, like a bathroom or the accessible pathway to get from the front door into the kitchen and bathroom, etc. If we have been able to do a pre-video assessment, we can go and take the measurements that we need without having to have a long discussion with the people in the household or who may be coming in and out of the household. We can just get the information we need and leave. It also gives us a much faster time to schedule services. So typically when a referral would come in, it might be a couple of weeks before you can schedule time to go out there. Say it's someone who's in a rural county that may be an hour or two from your location. So if we have a referral come in and we do a remote assessment, we may be able to get to it within a day or two, versus time to schedule to go out to see somebody. This also benefits the agency in terms of less staff time traveling. It gives staff more time to do the actual work that we've hired them to do, working directly with consumers, writing reports, doing research, that kind of stuff. So another great benefit is that we can do more frequent trainings and support sessions. And this is something I really like, is that for a lot of my career, I had a fairly large part of the state that I covered. Some areas it would take me 4 hours to reach. And if someone only needed a 5 or 10 minute training or had a little issue that they need dealt with, not only would it take me a while to be able to get out that far, but then I would spend 4 hours traveling. I might spend 15, 20 minutes there training or doing a support call, and then travel 4 hours back. So if someone needed continuous training, like in situations with, say, Dragon Naturally Speaking, where you might want to do a 30-minute training session twice a week for 2 or 3 weeks, and again, if that person is not located close by an office where the engineer or assistive technology specialist is located, it's kind of hard to do that. It's really hard to schedule and fit everything in. So it does allow us to provide more frequent trainings and support sessions for people. Of course, limitations are people are inexperienced with using remote meeting and support tools, and they're just not comfortable with it. I think one of the biggest issues we have in our state, especially in rural areas, is a lack of internet access, not being able to get good internet access or not having high-speed internet access. And I know that in one case, I was out looking at someone's house, and I had called one of the other engineers through FaceTime. We just didn't have a good enough connection in order to have a good conversation that way. So that can be a limitation. Sometimes it does require an assistant on site to position a camera. So if we were doing a remote ergonomic evaluation, we would need to have a coworker or supervisor or someone else. If it was a home ergonomic evaluation, there might be a spouse there to hold the camera and position it so that we could observe the person while they're walking or working. The other limitation is it does make services feel a little impersonal to some folks. Of course, we do have some people who would much rather refer to have remote services instead of having a stranger in their house. So that kind of goes both ways. Some important points to make is that because we're providing remote services, and this is kind of a new thing, is that we do want to make sure that we protect confidentiality. We do make sure to inform consumers of all the security precautions that we're taking, setting passwords and whatnot. The versions of remote software we're using have endpoint-to-endpoint encryption. That means someone in the middle can't really cut in. There's no way for somebody to get in. But in addition, if we have passwords set to meetings, or if we have a meeting room that's closed and locked, once all the participants are involved with the meeting so that no one can just pop in, that sort of thing really helps, and we let people know about that. We do want to remind people that confidentiality is only limited to the participants and the people who might overhear. So if you're having a private conversation through remote software and your door is open, your office door is open, or you're at the dining room table or whatever, people in the area can hear. So that is something to be concerned about. We also want to make sure that participants talk about not recording conversations that are involved with evaluations. So this may go a different way if you're providing training for somebody. They may want to record that training, and that's a conversation that you need to have with the person that you're working with to make sure that that's okay. They should have it with you, and you should have it with them if anyone wants to record anything. Starting a remote meeting. So at the start, you should discuss with the people who are participating who can potentially overhear. Again, if we're working from home, there may be a spouse or some kids or, I don't know, roommates who may be able to overhear a discussion. We do want to make sure that we're aware of who is in the area with somebody who's having a discussion, especially if it is a private discussion. So be aware of that and discuss that. You do want to make sure that participants are familiar with the meeting controls so they understand how to mute the microphone, how to turn the video off and on, that kind of thing. I say mute the microphone, also unmute the microphone. And make sure that they're familiar with how all that stuff works, especially if they've never used it before. Most meeting platforms are very similar, so once you know how to use Blue Jeans or whatever it's called, or Adobe Connect, usually you can adapt pretty quickly to Zoom or FaceTime. I also recommend that evaluators use a boom microphone. This is something that was pointed out to me early, and I know most of our evaluators have found out there is an echo issue. So you want to make sure you have a good boom microphone when you're talking to somebody so that it picks up your sound and we don't have feedback or echoing, which can be very annoying and distracting. And finally, also make sure you turn off notification sounds. So when I started this, I made sure my email was turned off so that as every email comes in, I don't get a ding that interferes with our meeting. Some other environmental considerations, and this has come up in some of the information that's been provided to me, is it's a good idea to know the physical location of the person that you are talking with in the unlikely event that they need assistance. Because if you're involved in a meeting and something happens to that person on the other end and you don't know where they are and you can't send help, that would be a real difficult position to be in. So it's also a good idea to know their physical location so you can document where they were when you were meeting. So if they're at their home, you could write down their address and they're in the upstairs bedroom. So if, God forbid, a storm comes through and a tree branch falls on them through the, I don't know what might happen, but you have a way of contacting someone to help. It's very important to follow dress codes, so it should go without saying don't attend Zoom meetings while wearing your bedclothes. You want to ensure that there's no identifying information on your end, such as your home address or pictures of family members or whatnot. Because when we are meeting with people remotely, we want to ensure that the focus remains on the services that are being delivered to that person. And so we have developed several different best practice documents on how we're performing different types of job accommodation or different types of evaluations. And so there's 4 primary areas that we really work on is job accommodation evaluations and home ergonomics, or I'm sorry, ergonomics in general. And so we've kind of talked through our process for doing that. We do a lot of stuff with computer access and educational technology. So a lot of that is completely remote. We really don't need to have face-to-face except for deliveries. Interior home modifications and wheelchair ramps, while they're related, we kind of have different protocols for doing those. So it's possible to do a wheelchair ramp evaluation on site with just talking with the person on the phone, never having any personal direct contact with them, never even having to enter their house. And then providing interior home modifications is much more invasive, and we do have to be able to either see what's going on inside the house and have measurements taken, or we have to be able to get into the house. So we have had with our consumers kind of a mix of people who absolutely don't want anybody entering their home, and then people who want someone to come in and do it, and they're adamant about that. So it's just kind of a balance of trying to figure out which is the best thing for which person. In terms of some resources that are available, we had started out using FaceTime, which does use end-to-end encryption. It's not HIPAA compliant. The research I've done says that it should be HIPAA compliant, but they haven't filled out the paperwork and submitted it to the proper regulatory agency. So it is not HIPAA compliant, but it does use endpoint-to-endpoint encryption. One of the limitations is it only works on Apple devices, which is a plus and minus. It's really simple to use. A lot of people have Apple devices, so it's real quick, and they don't need training on it because they use it all the time. We do primarily use Zoom for healthcare. However, it is HIPAA compliant and has endpoint-to-endpoint encryption, so you don't have to worry about anyone being able to listen in the middle. It works on all platforms. We've used it on Windows. It works on Chromebook. It works on Android tablets, iPhone tablets, works on Linux, works on pretty much everything, Windows, etc. And it does allow us to do some sharing, screen sharing and remote desktop control, which is a huge benefit when providing training, setting up software that might have been downloaded, and also providing technical support. And so the next person to talk will be Tabitha Spivey, who is our AT specialist up in Huntsville, and she is going to be covering the actual practical aspects of how she is providing services.
Hey, I'm Tabitha Spivey, and I'm the Assistive Technology Specialist out of the Huntsville, Alabama area, and I'm going to go through how to do a remote assistive technology evaluation with you. I've been doing these since mid-March, and I'd like to think that I've learned a few things, and I wanted to share that with you. So the first thing that you'll need to consider is your setup. Ideally, you're going to have all of the devices that I'm going to go through with you prior to completing a remote evaluation. Now, you will need a computer with a video camera. It will need to meet the minimum requirements that are found on Zoom's website. You will also need a tablet or a smartphone if you're going to be demonstrating any apps. A document camera would be useful if you have one on hand. If you don't, then there's other ways of setting that up, and I'll go through that with you in just a moment. A USB headset with a microphone will help for a couple different reasons. It helps with sound quality, it helps eliminate background noise, and also it helps ensure the confidentiality of the client on your end. You will need a good workspace. You'll need a flat area to work and to spread your assistive technology and your computer and your document camera, your other setup out on that desk like I've got here. Ideally, you'll probably benefit from having even bigger workspace. Any tools or software that you want to demonstrate, you'll need to go ahead and have that downloaded on your devices or have that handy, and you're going to want to have that charged up and ready to go. Now, you can see here that I did not have a document camera, so instead I'm using a little mount that I created. A coworker of mine suggested that I manipulate a wire hanger to put my iPad on top of. It would also work with the iPhone as well. I could have used either one, but I put that on top of it, on top of the purple box there, and then I have the hanger to hold the device up, and then the books are on top to keep it stabilized. So it works just as well as a document camera, and it's a whole lot cheaper. Now, when you're scheduling your Zoom meeting, you're going to need to generate an automatic meeting ID and require a password. This helps keep any uninvited participants out of your meeting. You will also need to enable your waiting room. That keeps people out until you're ready to let them in. I also prefer to have my software loaded up and websites ready before I let them in. That way it just makes the meeting go more efficiently. If you have locked the door as well when the meeting starts, it just ensures that you don't have any uninvited guests. Now, when scheduling with your consumer, you're going to want to have a brief conversation about the upcoming evaluation. This would include that you are using a HIPAA-compliant account, but if anyone on their end is listening, it won't be secure anymore. It's as secure as using a phone call. It's like using speakerphone. If there's anybody around, they're going to hear the conversation. So you using a headset is helping to ensure your end is good, but they're responsible for double checking their end and making sure that other people aren't listening. Also, high-speed internet is necessary to use the video and screen sharing on Zoom. If they don't have high-speed internet, you'll need to explore some other methods, maybe such as using their cell service or them going somewhere where there is high-speed internet. If a client is satisfied with this method of completing an evaluation, you will need to share the meeting link via email. This encourages them to use their computer or tablet to join the meeting instead of their smartphone. I would also mention this to them. If they use their phone, they often don't sit and focus as well as when they're using a computer or even a tablet. I've also had to ask clients to turn off their television or to turn music down, those sorts of things, just so they can better hear me and focus on what I'm sharing with them. Often I'm dealing with consumers that have trouble focusing anyway. Now also, when you're preparing for the evaluation, you're going to need to review the reason for the referral. Do they have trouble focusing? Do they have a learning disability? What's the reason that they're being referred to me? I'll need to know these things before I meet with them. Are they hard of hearing? If they're hard of hearing, they might need an interpreter. If they need any accommodations, that's going to need to be considered prior to the Zoom, because you'll need to also include the interpreter or figure out those other accommodations. You're going to go ahead and have any software and websites ready prior to the meeting to reduce the wait time. If you need to eliminate some or add some, that's no big deal. It's just if there's some that you already have in mind, go ahead and have them ready. Make sure the computer is not going to die on you during your evaluation. You want to have it plugged in and fully charged. A strong internet connection is needed to be able to use the full capabilities of Zoom. That way you can use video and screen sharing. Ideally, you'll use an Ethernet cable, but we don't always have access to that, to a hardwire connection. So as long as you have a strong Wi-Fi connection and it's fast, then you're likely going to be okay with Zoom. Make sure to turn on or turn any devices on to Do Not Disturb. I'll go through that with you in just a minute when we start the Zoom. This should also include any devices in the room with you to eliminate distractions. So if your phone is sitting next to you, you should turn that on silent or put that on Do Not Disturb, just so that it doesn't happen to go off in the middle of your meeting, just as if you were in a physical meeting with a consumer. The door should be closed to ensure that others cannot overhear, but like I said earlier, wear that USB headset. Now I'm going to go through how to actually do the Zoom and the screen sharing and the audio with you outside of these slides. So in order to share your screen from your computer, you're going to go to your Zoom toolbar, then select Share Screen, as it's shown here. And then you're going to go and to this next toolbar over here, and you're going to select Screen. There are other options that you can use as well, but selecting Screen guarantees that your entire computer screen, your desktop, is being shown. Then you will come down to Share Computer Sound, and you will select that if you have any software or websites that may have sound that you would like to share. Okay, so now we're going to go through how to do the Zoom meeting. So down on the far bottom right, if you're using Windows 10, you've got a little symbol, and you can see mine already has the little moon there, but if yours doesn't, right-click that, and then you've got this called Focus Assist. And if you hover over that, you now have new options. You've got off, priority, alarms only. And I usually set mine on alarms only. And what that does is that keeps your notifications from not popping up. Now, I know on Mac you have Do Not Disturb, and you've also got that on the iOS products And I'm going to show you that on the iPad in just a second when I switch over to that. So now I'm going to show you how I actually do an evaluation. So if I'm working with a student, I'm likely going to show them some study tools that can help them be successful in school. So one of those study tools is Khan Academy, and I've already got that pulled up here. Like I mentioned a moment ago, I like to go ahead and have those things pulled up so that it makes the meeting go much smoother. So I've got khanacademy.org pulled up here, and I would go through. If I was working with a college student, I would go find me a college level course. So here we've got differential equations, and I've got my word queue thing popped up here, so I'm going to close that out for the moment. Okay, so I've got these videos here. And if I was wanting to show a student how in-depth these videos go, I might start with this one. And I'm going to click. And my student that I'm working with can see everything I'm showing, just like I... Okay, so I had to pause that there. So we're able to see the video together. We're able... One thing you want to double check is that if you go in your Zoom settings under More, that you click Share Computer Sound. So they can actually hear just like you hear. So I'm going to hit play, and I'm going to just show you how you can hear that as well as I can.
Later. For now, let's just think about, or at least look at, what a differential equation.
And it's already captioned for you, so that's great. Now, that's one great website that I like to show students. I'm going to X that out since I'm done with that. And then we've got homeworkalabama.org. And this is a great website that I like to share with students. I can walk through how they would create an account on Homework Alabama, and they would click Get Started, and I can actually go through and create their account for them. And then they've already got that set up. And then I would later email them the password and email address that we had set so that they would have that information. So that's an excellent resource. Now, there's a lot more that I show students, but I'm not going to go through all of that. I just want you to see how I can demonstrate all of that. Another thing that we can do on Zoom, I'm going to close this out, is we can demonstrate WordQ, and they can control it so that they can actually experience what it's like to type into WordQ. So if I open up WordQ, let's see, then we go in and open Word. I'm showing you how I open all of this, but if I was actually working with a consumer, it would be ideal to go ahead and have all of this open. Okay, so I'm going to open a blank document. I could open it twice there. Okay, so I'm going to maximize that on my screen. Then I'm going to go to my Zoom toolbar, and it says Remote Control, and I'm going to click Remote Control. And I'm going to give the so happens to be Tabitha Spivey. Okay, now Tabitha Spivey is able to go through and remote control my computer so that she can actually experience what it's like to type on WordQ. So I'm also looking here at my other device so that I can remote control my own screen. And Tabitha can click on the screen, and then Tabitha can type. So the consumer is able to actually hear and feel what WordQ is like without actually having that computer in front of them. So I'm typing this.
This
is
a great
tool. Now, once I type that period, it's going to read that whole sentence out loud.
tool. This is a great tool.
And so you can see how the client that you're working with can actually type onto your screen and get a feel for how WordQ works. So that can be helpful in both ways. If you need to work on your client's computer and help them set up software or equipment, that would also work the other way around. So you can remote control their computer. Okay, so now we're going to look at how to use the iPad as a document. All I did was screen share from my iPad and open the camera. Now, the trick was tweaking my paper and making it how I wanted to position it so that it was easy for me to write on. And so I've got my Echo pen here, my LiveScribe pen, and I turned it on. And I always show the consumer that so that they can see how that works. And then I come down here on my paper and I show them that I tap the record button. And then I start writing my notes. So if I was in an evaluation, I would just give them some examples of taking notes. And then afterwards, I would tap stop. Now, since I'm on a Zoom and I'm using a headset, I always play back the notes where they can hear it by holding the pen close to the microphone. So I'm going to go and tap the notes, and then I'm going to hold the pen up to my microphone so that you can actually hear what it sounds like. In evaluation, I would just give them some examples of taking notes. And then afterwards, I would. Okay, so you get the idea of how I would actually show the Echo pen. I also would probably show the Echo desktop software on my computer through screen sharing. Okay, so that is a great tool that I like to show my consumers over Zoom. Now, in order to share the screen from my iPad, I'm going to need to join the Zoom meeting from my iPad or other smartphone as well. Then I'm going to go and share my screen. I will go to Start Broadcast, and I will select Microphone On if I want the iPad's audio to be played within my Zoom. So now I'm going to share the iPad screen, and I'm going to show you some apps on the iPad. And so all I did was go and share my iPad screen, and I did select that I want the audio to be shared as well, and that will allow the recordings on the iPad to show. Okay, so you see at the top I have that little bitty microphone, and I'm going to tap that microphone. So now it's recording, and then I'm going to tap anywhere on that screen, tap the T and tap anywhere on the screen, and then I'm just going to type. Now, one limitation here is that my consumer can't actually see the keyboard that I would typically be using. I would be using a case with a keyboard instead of this on-screen keyboard. But I always explain that to my consumer as we're working together on our evaluation. So I'm going to tap stop, and I can tap the arrow next to the microphone at the top, and you see the drop down bar, and I have the play sign. Tap it, and you can hear it.
Test. And then I'm just going to type.
So whatever part I want to hear, I just tap it and it's going to play it back for me. So I am going to close this app out. And one thing is, when you are connecting with multiple devices on Zoom, you are going to need to make sure that only one device is connected to the audio. And that's because if you've got multiple devices going at once, like right now I've got the iPad connected and I've got the computer connected, And if I'm speaking, you're going to hear a lot of echo and just messed up noise. So make sure that when it asks you to connect to audio on your iPad or your phone, any other device, that you go ahead and don't connect to the audio. Yet when you're broadcasting, that you do connect to the audio just so that the participants can hear what the app is actually playing back. And of course, on the computer, you got to make sure that you play that sound from the computer. The audio was one of the trickiest parts for me when I learned how to use Zoom for presentations. Now, one other thing that I wanted to share with you is the Do Not Disturb on the iPad. That's something that you want to make sure that you've got on while you're working with your clients. Now, let's see, start broadcast. Okay, so it's back up again. I'm sharing my screen. So you can see here at the very top, I've already got the little moon symbol up, but I can swipe down and on the far right side, and it's going to have the little moon symbol. You tap that. Now that it's in the grayish color, that symbolizes that the Do Not Disturb is on. So you won't have emails popping up, texts popping up, and other sorts of things. It should all stay away. Now, in your Do Not Disturb settings, if you go into settings and then Do Not Disturb, you can change those and you can tweak any of those different settings as well. Hopefully this has helped you see some of the ways that Zoom can be used for remote assistive technology evaluations and demonstrations. The only real limitation that I have found, that I haven't found an answer to yet, is that clients are not able to voice control my computer or my devices, so they're not able to try any of the speech-to-text software themselves. However, I'm able to show them how it works. Unless they have speech issues, then I can safely assume that it's going to work for them, as long as they're comfortable with learning how to use it. Thanks for watching.